Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley. We're doing something very, very special next week. We're doing another crossover episode with one of my favorite podcasts, What Did You Learn? With Monica Scott and Luke Jensen, who join me right now. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
I went loud hello. I feel like I usually do a hi there. Actually, what do I do? What is my personality?
Hello.
Usually kind
Who
of.
am I?
We usually kind of stumble into it weirdly.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, you mean
hi.
everything we ever do?
Yeah.
For next week's episode, we're doing a crossover with What Did You Learn? And last year we did Beyond the Mat, classic professional wrestling documentary. And this year...
We took a pretty big departure, I'd say.
Yeah. This year we're doing Hitman Hart, Wrestling with Shadows, another classic wrestling documentary. So, fun thing about this movie is that it's available in its entirety on YouTube.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to have Netflix. You don't have to have Amazon, nothing. Anybody can watch this bad boy. Just pull up youtube.com, type in Hitman Hart Wrestling with Shadows, and the full hour and a half, hour 47, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Hour and a half.
Yeah, the full thing's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So for next week, check out Hitman Hart Wrestling with Shadows. We're going to be watching that and talking about it on the Goods from the Woods and What Did You Learn? Check out Monica and Luke on Twitter. Monica, where can they find you on the internet?
At Mighty Monica, Monica with a K.
And Luke?
At Luke F. Jensen.
All right, well, we're going to start this week's episode, so please enjoy this episode with our friend James Austin Johnson.
Hail Satan.
Now fix to start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother. The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares on the best part of my day.
The Goods from the Woods.
Hot damn!
Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
I am Pat.
You're just like Prince now or Cher.
One name.
I am Pat.
I am Pat. I assume the lamest name for the one name. Because Patrick just sounds like the name of a hair. Like, I'm Patrick. It doesn't really go well.
Mr. Goodnight Body made a twisted steel, supersonic sex appeal.
And joining us today, Music City's finest, ladies and gentlemen, my friend.
United States Senator Bob Corker. And I'm just here to sort of demystify a lot of the issues surrounding the so-called unquote-unquote Trump care and set a few things straight and make sure that people have the right information because there's a lot of misinformation out there in the current media climate. And I'm here to do grassroots, groundswell, sort of a decluttering of the desktop.
Decluttering.
Put some papers away and sets in things right. So I'm here to field some of those questions.
Oh, okay. When you said the desktop, I was worried like you were talking about like a computer desktop.
That was the metaphor that I was going with. Is sort of when you look at a desktop on a computer.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of files on there. You go, oh, I wish I knew which files looking for. And so you drag them all and you put them in one folder. Call a folder something like stuff. And so we drag all that into a folder, and that's what we're doing with this bill. With this bill, we're looking at Obamacare. If you look at Obamacare, it's, by the way, it was never called that officially. That's just the racist name that we call it because that guy is a different color and has an odd-sounding name. And so we decided, let's call it something evil, but that's not on the paper. But we're not evil because we didn't say that officially. Do you understand the distinction I'm trying to draw? We're not monsters. We're just racist dudes who let other people be monsters. And we go, well, that's not us, but also it's 100% something I agree with.
So Senator
You're
Bob.
not officially monsters.
Not officially
So
monsters.
Senator Bob, did you go over those nuances during your set of Good Heroin?
Yes. Well, see, Good Heroin is very interesting.
You're really
That's an
hitting people
interesting-
just like small pockets at a time. I love this.
Oh, yeah. Well, Good Heroin, yeah, that's right. I'm trying to see... So you gotta
when we
go,
talk about the grassroots, baby, you were
gotta
digging
go,
in the dirt.
Yeah, I know. You got to go to these places like Echo Park where you got these dangerous, violent liberals who advocate violence, who advocate, take me seriously here, who advocate violence against anyone who doesn't think like them. A rainbow flag, if you look at a rainbow flag, what's one of the main colors on a rainbow flag? The red color of blood, the blood that they've threatened to take in a white genocide against the white people.
I thought it would be indigo because nobody knows what indigo really is.
Well, indigo is a designation of folk rock group, wherein two women who've decided that they're just going to go to hell, and that's what they're doing. Get together, and they record a song that says, "Oh, such hold hands and be free," in Galileo and such. And in truth, that no one's getting any closer to fine the more we listen to the Indigo Girls. You got to listen to the people that really count.
The Indiglow girls, the people who sell the watch. They sell the watches that light up.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we want to talk about hazardous materials,
Indiglow
is a very hazardous material that is actually required as part of a daily diet under the new Trump care. By the way, see, that's not the official name. That's an evil name that liberals have foisted upon our bill. And if you read the actual bill, you will see that it is actually officially called the Super Cool Rad Bill for cool cats and cool chicks. It's not called no Trump care. It's not called Death Panel care. Nothing like that. It's called the Cool Bill for cool gals and cool chicks and cool dudes. And it's meant for everybody. Meant for everybody.
How's the dental in it?
There's no dental. We forgot about that. Like I was trying to say with this decluttering the desktop, Obamacare, so-called, because we're evil, Obamacare is something like 2,200,000 pages long. I'm looking at this thing going, what's this, a stand by Stephen King on a bridge? I go, this thing, I could stop a door with this thing. It's door of a Hobby Lobby with this thing. And so we go, I'm just a simple man. I may be a United States Senator with a bunch of people's decisions and money sort of hanging in the balance and lives sort of hanging in the balance, but I'm a simple Christian guy. I look at that and I go, that's too long. Let's do one sentence. So we started with one sentence, which was, let's help everybody, this white and a dude. And then we sort of had to...
And a billionaire.
We had to... you see, the distinction, you got to start adding in for other people at some point. So we started adding in. Suddenly, we got to about 30. And at that point, as far as we got on the demographics list, we had only, about 30 pages in, we had only got to listing all of the different kinds of white dudes that are 41. And we're trying to go 41 to 45, and we can just get that pocket. We believe that the rest of the good health will trickle down from these people.
Okay. Wait, that's my demographic, and I don't have dental.
You don't have dental?
Yeah.
Well, you don't need dental to praise God, because if you look at Psalms, it says, make a joyful noise, and it gives a big list. I didn't memorize the Bible, but it gives a big list of all the different ways you can do it.
I praise God all the time, whether I have teeth or not. But
whether you have teeth or you don't need teeth for a tambourine.
I never asked them for teeth, for health insurance. So. Just look what happened to Job, man. Look what happened to Job.
Well,
yeah.
Oh man. Well,
did Job lose a front incisor?
Jesus had to come around and give the stuff out for free because nobody was getting it.
Yeah, that's right.
Job, you look at Job, talk about America right now. That's a man who's being pulled between two polar opposites. He's being pulled between God and the devil and form and convention and
his three friends with different arguments about who's to blame for his plight.
Have you ever noticed how Job is one of the oldest books of the Bible, but they stick it way in there, way deep in that book?
Oh, yeah.
It's probably the first one written that they shove it way back in there. What character am I doing now? It's Bob Corker, but he's like skeptical.
I don't know. I was hoping this was going to go through because they think we really get big names on this show.
I'm Bob Corker. I don't know what that was. I had sort of a fit spell.
I've heard that it was intentionally written to look archaic.
You heard that?
Yeah.
And I understand
that might be a heathen thing, you understand?
No. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But I want to ask you something. You're a historical man, and you're a man of letters and books, and you're aware of some of these things. Where did you get this that it's meant to sound archaic? Because how do you do that with the Hebrew and Aramaic and such that it's been written in?
Well, just like you could do with English, where if you wanted to... write a history of anything, bananas. And you started with an intentional, sort of in the beginning, there were the bananas.
And the bananas were good.
And the bananas were good, and the bananas giveth seeds. There's ways you can write in the language by using archaisms to give a story. An old look, like that thing Mason and Dixon.
Yeah, what is that called? Verisimilitude.
Yeah, exactly. They got a word for it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, where you sort of act like there's more going on than what's there.
Yeah. Like,
okay.
It's like
maybe we should call it the verisimilitude bill.
Yeah,
because we're sort of pulling off a magic trick where we go, hey, this is going to help everybody. And then when you open it up, it goes, no, it's not.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're trying to do with this bill is be like, hey, everybody, can we all agree that this all helps everybody? And then it turns out it doesn't. But,
Right.
but the point is that we all agreed.
It's kind of like how rappers who never sold drugs or participated in gang activity will brag about doing such a thing as a way to represent their community and rather their own personal experience.
That's called their propers, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just waiting for Lamar Alexander to show up. We want to go through all the.
Somebody say my name.
Oh, here he is.
Lamar Alexander,
Can I get
everybody.
on the mic here? Hi, Lamar Alexander. I set down my very syrupy lemonade tea drink on the silver pan here that my manservant Domingo has materialized for me. Domingo is magical, and of
My
course,
man Sunday.
he's sort of my girl Friday and my man Sunday and my bro Wednesday. And all. I get
Because
him
he's
many
magical. He can do a lot of things.
He's magical.
Brother Miraculez helps me out in my day to day.
And he's been nice to me too. I've talked to him too, and I met him too. Well, thank you, Bob. By the way, it's good to see you again. But I've come here to throw my hat into the ring and also demystify some of the lesser bills that we've got in our plan. Such as the mandatory Mario hat bill, which I'm very proud of, because there's been some with gang colors, and you can represent all kinds of awful things, awful different groups and stuff, and so I have made a mandatory. The only cap that you can wear in America is a Mario cap.
So a big red hat with an M on there.
Well, we wanted to fit all the rest of Make America Great Again. Mm-hmm. We only had
room
enough
for the
embroidery for the one M.
Yeah.
We did the M too big. Happens to look like the character Mario. We're very excited about it. This new hat is mandatory.
So there's no like Luigi choice.
Yeah, that's the
or anything
resistance.
like that.
Well,
It's a big old L for left. The green left.
yeah.
or indeed Wario.
yeah, Wario.
You don't get a choice with the hat, and you don't get many other choices except for the choice that your children will be forced to go.
But I want
charter
I
schools.
want the Luigi hat because I like to jump high and kick my legs when I jump in
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Luigi was a cool
Circular
dude. He had some
sort of fashion.
weight fluctuations.
which does kind of get to the theme of our show before.
Oh, well, our bus is leaving. Lamar, our bus is leaving. Oh, Lamar, do you see that out the window? Lamar, can you go grab it? I'm grabbing it right now. I'll hold the door open for you, Bob. All right, Rivers, do you mind if I head out? Because a big bus is leaving.
Oh, that's fine. Senator Bob Corker, everybody.
Really nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me here on the podcast.
Big names, man. Big names.
Good gets.
This is better than a McLaughlin group.
Oh, and here's our friend James Austin Johnson. Wow.
I just saw Bob Corker and Lamar Alexander and like 40 aides in your living room. By the way, they destroyed your LaCroix.
I was going to say,
It's
they
gone.
cleaned me the fuck out of seltzer water.
All those 22-year-olds with Blackberries just cleared out all your seltzer water.
I bought...
You got to stay hydrated when you play Brick Breaker.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Are those guys fine? Do you think that they'll lock up and stuff on their way out?
They'll figure it out. I'm sure he's a United States senator.
They look fine.
The one thing I have found interesting, and then we will go straight into what we were talking about today. All of us liberal people from the South, since the Trump administration started, we've all kind of felt like record store hipsters whose favorite bands made it huge because now everybody knows about the people we've known that were shitheads for years.
Oh, wait. What do you mean?
So I've known Jeff Sessions was an asshole since 05,
yeah.
dude. It's like being in on the ground floor with some indie band and then making it on TV, and you're like, I fucking told you years ago this guy was a piece of shit.
So now you're a political hipster.
I'm a political hipster, yeah, dude. I feel
Jeff Sessions was over there doing like early Kings of Leon,
Oh,
like
dude,
the
I
garage
was-
songs
yeah.
back in Alabama.
Yeah,
And now
when-
he's here. He's done his Use Somebody.
Yeah, when he
got on Twilight soundtrack.
Yeah, that's
now
right.
he's getting the money he should have gotten for Ah Shake Heartbreak and Youth and Young Man.
Right, yeah,
great records. Now they're an arena band and they suck. but
right.
it's like,
Yeah, his state Congress run was his California Waiting. Like,
yeah.
like I knew about that shit in 05, baby.
I do better
That's a
impressions.
perfect-
I do a lot better impressions than that, but that one I
That
thought
one's
you might
great.
give it a chuckle.
No, it's amazing.
I could have tried harder. I feel like I should have.
My favorite kind of impression is one that doesn't have any words. It's just sounds, which,
Oh yeah, then you'd love my Al Jarreau.
Well, no, your Bob Dylan cell phone is one of my favorite jokes of all time.
You can do it right now if you want to.
No,
Why don't you do it on the show?
I mean, it's just it's very simple joke.
I'll lead you into it.
Okay, yeah.
And now Rivers Langley with a classic James Austin Johnson bit. Bob Dylan cell phone set to vibrate. There we go. Great. Rivers Langley, everybody.
Dude, it's such a great joke, and it's so simple. And the first time I saw you do it, I was like, God damn it. That's how you know the joke is good, when you're like, fuck, it was right there.
That's when I know that I'm like going to the right little indie shows, because in LA there's like a billion shows to go to.
It's a good tester.
And when I go to a show and I hear somebody do a bit and I go, what the shit?
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that? That is like the kind of you hear and what they said. Like, my girlfriend is always confused whenever I do that, because what they said is like, it only makes sense because I'm a comedian or something. Like, I heard somebody say like, why isn't an alligator shaped like a toilet? And it doesn't. It's not even a fully formed thought, but I'll be over there like, fuck, why didn't I think of that? I had an alligator toilet thing 3 weeks ago, and I was like, too weird, I can't do it. Right. And I just watched it crush.
It's one thing, actually. It's the guy I think of specifically all the time is Baron Vaughn. When you watch him,
he beats you to a lot of.
Well, no, it's not that he beats me to it. It's that he makes me sad that I've abandoned things I thought were too weird, because he's able to take the weirdest concept and fucking make it this insane fire bit. And you're just like, fuck, that's so impressive. Because there's, my notebook, 90% of it is like a long thing I wrote, and it got to the end of it like, that's for nobody.
Yeah.
That joke is for fucking nobody.
Or it's for Baron Vaughn to tell for everyone.
Yeah, potentially.
And it's just,
It's not that he ever beats me to anything. It's just, you just watch it, you're just like, fuck, that's so weird, and everybody's loving it.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I always think it's really funny when people get mad at black people for making up names. That's always a really funny argument. Like, you guys are making up names. Stop making up names. I mean, you can't make up a name that's not a name. You gotta name your kid a name that's already a name. You guys are just like taking things and putting them together. I don't know what I'm supposed to think. Like, what? Debrickashaw? What does that mean? There's an apostrophe in the middle of it. Does Brickashaw imply that D is possessive? I don't know what's happening. Stop making up names. Name your kid that's a name. That's a name. Come on. Counter argument. Every name ever in the history of names was made the fuck up. It wasn't, and then it was. I guarantee you the first person that wanted to name their child Brian was stoned to death while people were like, you can't make up names. B-R-I-A-N, that doesn't exist. Name your kid a name that's a name, like Hotep, something that people know. Akhenaten Hotep. People will hire a Hotep.
Video games, guys. We're talking.
I heard over the chatter of all the political.
That's
aides
right.
In the lobby that you guys were going to talk about Mario stuff.
Well, and the one thing that I wanted to say on the topic that we didn't acknowledge is probably the laziest video game character of all time, Waluigi.
Waluigi.
Yeah. So you got your Mario, you got your Luigi, you got your Wario. Okay. And then it comes time to make evil Luigi, and the best that presumably a team of smart people could come up with was Waluigi.
Okay, point. Doesn't wa imply evil in the Japanese language?
Oh, is that true?
So isn't Wario like evil-o in Japanese?
Wait, explain. Have you seen this prefix before?
I read about it. I ain't seen the kanjis and
Right.
any other wild foreign
You
letters.
couldn't tell me the characters itself.
I couldn't tell you the characters itself, but I've heard that wa is
that would make sense.
part of the word evil.
See,
in
I had just
Japanese.
assumed
That would
that
make sense.
since it's an M, like the opposite would be upside down, right? So the M makes it
all
W on
this
the
shit
hat.
might have been involved.
Yeah, the word war.
Yeah,
instead
war
of the
is in
word
it.
Yeah,
But if you call him Ouija, he has like mystical, occultic, like.
Yeah, or he
yeah.
sounds like the wife on the Jeffersons.
yeah. Nintendo of America is like or at least in the 90s, was like a notoriously like trigger happy censorship thing, where there were so many things that have been edited out of countless games, a lot of RPGs, anything that there's room for Japanese culture, which might be antithetical to mainstream Western culture, stuff that's critical of church. Like they have to call in the Dragon Quest series, you save at churches, but they have to call them like something else. because
House
you
of
can't.
Refuge or something.
Yeah, something like that because you can't, or Sanctuary.
Yeah, but they always
Because
had that weird
Nintendo-
religious
yeah.
imagery in Castlevania, though.
Yeah.
And you could always tell it was like Easterners who didn't quite get Christianity right.
That's probably my favorite thing to analyze in video games, not just in Castlevania, Final Fantasy 2. A lot of anything with a fantastical bent, you're borrowing from a lot of European lore, and they come at it from just a totally different angle.
Right.
And it's so fun to see, especially when you start reading about translations and translating games to make sense to Western audiences. You learn how, a little bit more of their perspective on the mainstream culture that we're used to. It could be very fascinating. I love...
Well, let me ask you this, brother. You played the Dragon Warrior games, known in Japan as the Dragon Quest.
Yes.
Have you beat any of them?
I have never beaten a Final Fantasy.
I've beat all 4 of the original
NES
Dragon
ones?
Warriors, and the first Final Fantasy.
That had to have taken forever because I tried to beat Dragon Warrior one time and it literally took me
the early ones
months.
are almost
It's basically a giant level up.
I was gonna say, tell me.
So you're just killing slime over,
over and over.
I'm actually not familiar. Tell me, and for anybody listening who might not know, tell me a bit about the Dragon Warrior series because I'm not entirely familiar.
Sure, it's. I think it might even predate Final Fantasy. It
does.
It does. Predates Final Fantasy. I actually think maybe Final Fantasy and a lot of the translations of Final Fantasy were seeing the success of Dragon Quest games in Japan and trying to figure out how to take this, because we had maybe Dungeons and Dragons. That's we have some stuff that kind of mimics that JRPG.
Yeah.
It's a niche kind of video game.
Oh, okay. So it's like Final Fantasy. Where
It's like Final
RPG kind of
Fantasy. The artist though is
the Dragon Ball guy.
The Dragon Ball guy.
Oh, okay.
Akira Toriyama, I believe is his name.
Okay.
And he also did Chrono Trigger, which I think is kind of the apex of that genre and that console generation storytelling in general.
It was big. The Dragon War games were real big in Japan, and they got them over pretty big over here because the RPG thing was new. They gave away the first one with a subscription to Nintendo Power.
Yeah, that's how they did it.
And with a guide, you'd get a guide.
Yeah. I have one of those guides somewhere. I think.
And it's basically a giant level up. So it's like you have to go to certain places. There's puzzles and stuff like that, but really the key to it is having the patience to kill slimes and skeletons and ninjas until you get enough golds to buy the Eldritch Sword.
Yeah, and then you go, because if you cross the bridge to the other continent, you'll immediately be killed by some Frankenstein thing.
Did you guys ever play Mother 1, which is like the NES? It's the Earthbound is Mother 2. So there's this Earthbound game for SNES, which is that
game is endless.
It's endless. It's very long. It's very funny though.
It's funny and it's amusing, but it's too damn long.
Oh yeah,
that's a game with Ness, right?
Yeah, that's Ness from Super Smash Brothers.
So
it's a parody of American culture. It's an RPG where it's like, let's not do a hero in armor with a sword. Let's do a kid with a baseball cap and a yo-yo, and he walks around these American. Like the
towns.
Eagle Land is the name of the country. Eagle Land, America.
I would prefer if America was called Eagle Land.
Well, that would be good, but especially Captain Freedom, I think, could be the president. But, but the thing I liked about it was it had old fashioned things like you'd go in the department store to buy tickets.
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, there was two things about that I remember. One, with Smash Brothers, it always cracked me up. Is that for some reason he had like a thing, his thunder move, his lightning move. It always sounded like he was saying Chip Thunder.
PK Thunder.
Yeah, which sounds like the name of Chip Thunder is like Lance potato chips would have Chip Thunder. It's like really generic chips that you'd buy at like really seedy.
That's a good name.
But
my name is Chip.
I was going to say Chip Thunder sounds like one of the dancers at Thunder from Down Under in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm Chip Thunder. Look at my balls.
My girlfriend went to that, by the way.
What? Oh, really?
Chip Thunder there?
She went to...
Is she still your girlfriend? She came back?
She didn't run off with Chip Thunder.
James, I took your girlfriend.
But doctor, I am Chip Thunder.
I took your Sheila.
It's the Pagliacci story.
Yeah.
The Australian male stripper Chip Thunder is in town. Surely your depression will cure you then. But doctor, I am Chip Thunder.
I am Chip Thunder.
I love the knockoff version that they have at Morongo. 50 Shades of Male. That's a good one.
Oh God!
Yeah, so it's
There's
combining
lots of knockoffs.
three.
I'm into it because it's not the one that I remember, but I'm interested because it's got that
But it's
relevant.
not men; it's male.
Yeah.
It's
See,
it's refined and scientific.
Yeah.
I would love it if they couldn't.
Demographically centered.
I would love it if they couldn't afford Australian, so they just had some other country. Like you go, it's like, oh, it's all Finns. You know?
Well, they have the
They're all
Australian
from New
Bee
Zealand.
Gees.
The Australian Bee Gees.
Yeah, it's a tribute to the Bee Gees that plays there. So if they ever get hard up for men, they could always maybe recruit a Bee Gee. It's like, doesn't that naked guy on the end look like Robin Gibb?
But
fake Robin Gibb.
that's embarrassing.
What are the Australian Bee Gees called? The Bogans?
The bogies.
No, they're called the Australian Bee Gees.
They're called the Australian Bee Gees.
Yeah. That's because they're a tribute, and I guess they're real Australians.
I mean, it's
BG Australia.
It's kind of like Mini Kiss. You have to like lay out what the difference is automatically. Where it's
so
like,
that
no,
nobody's
these aren't-
fooled and think they've
these
come
aren't
back to life.
Yeah, these aren't the real Bee Gees that are from the Isle of Man that moved to Australia. These are actual Australians.
Australian Bee Gees.
What about Beej Az? That's another Australian. I'm not being very funny.
The other thing that I remember related to Earthbound is that I always loved River City Ransom.
Oh, that
for
was
the
a
reason
favorite.
where there was
Beat 'em
like
up.
a commercial. It was a beat 'em up, but there was like a commercial element where you had to like just get enough money to buy.
Oh yeah, but
feel.
you could play
know.
River City Ransom, and it was like your own adventure because you could fall in love with the girl at the Merv Burger, and you could eat the sushi and all the foods of your choice, and specialize. And I would play it with neighbor Frank, and I would do the fist attacks, and he would do the foot attacks. Because you could specialize.
Yeah, and everybody goes for those Texas boots, but you could get the mod boots and be a lot more stylish.
Like a beetle.
Yeah, sure. Beat 'em ups are weird. It's when you look when you look back at beat 'em ups as a genre. I have become a JRPG person, but I didn't grow up with them.
Yeah.
But as I became an adult, I found that really what I want to do is like temp data entry. Like I want to block out 4 hours of my day where I organize everybody's swords and abilities and stuff like a fucking spreadsheet for my job. And I do I really don't even play the game. I like organize or like on my computer just organize like emulators and ROMs and stuff. Just I don't have the album artwork for that. And that's what I spend hours doing now. Is this RPG bullshit. But like looking back, I grew up on beat 'em ups. I grew up on the new Batman game that had come out, the new Power Rangers game, Battletoads,
Streets of Rage.
TMNT, Streets of Rage, Double Dragon. I loved all those games. I look back on them now, I'm so bored by them. Yeah, homogenous, repetitive.
Some hold up better than others.
They do. Some of them. Simpsons arcade game is pretty fun. It's pretty rewarding.
They have one at Redondo Beach, but some of the controls don't work too good.
The one at 82 and DTLA still works pretty great. All the characters were working great.
Yeah,
I played it with my girlfriend the other weekend.
The one of the things about Battletoads that I realized, my friend got married, and one of my friends got him as a wedding present or a bachelor party present the vinyl of the soundtrack of Battletoads.
Like chiptune or like orchestrated?
No, it was like chiptune.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially, yeah. And the funny thing was that the... Oh, yeah. And the pause... But the thing is that on side one, it ends with the pause music, and it has a repeating groove in it, so it will go on.
Oh, it's like the end of Sgt. Pepper's?
Yeah, exactly. But it's just
better.
Yeah, but it's just the pause music that...
The thing I always remember about Battletoads is the Dark Queen was one hot mama, man.
Oh yeah, what was their deal where they were like, let's take down this pretty conventionally attractive lady in her 40s? Like what psychologically is going on there?
I don't know, but she was sexy.
I was used to grotesques as the enemies of these games.
Oh no, Battletoads can teach you a lot about life though in that way.
Yeah.
Is this the pause music?
Yeah.
I think you've created a monster.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Turn it back up.
Oh, yeah. Are you about to rap?
I'm Bob Corker, and I'm here to say that I think the AHCA should be repealed, and I'll tell you why. Because Obama wasn't a good guy. He was unpresidential, didn't look like me, and I don't like when he's windsurfing. Sasha and Malia smoked pot and raised their middle finger, and Michelle Obama is a monster. Bob, get out of here, Bob Corker. Get on out of here.
He had flow, man.
He did pretty well considering.
The other thing I loved about Battletoads was that one of the levels was called Intruder Excluder, which sounds like the name of like a French like post-structuralist like philosophy book where it's just like it's like Michel Foucault's Intruder Excluder.
I hear French, fancy French black and white pornography.
No, there's a lot of psychological and philosophical complexities in Battletoads. People just don't realize that.
Yeah, I guess there is when you think about it. It is sort of like, I mean, it's definitely an existentialist game because it's almost unbeatable. It's
real. That's sled level, man.
It's suffering.
What are frogs doing in the snow?
Yeah, and also, if you create a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, there's someone else out there who will create a... I don't remember what philosopher it was who propagated the doppelganger, but you'll have a Battletoads, an evil version of yourself who's come from another dimension to kill you.
Three doppelgangers right there. The thing I think people forget about that game too is actually one of the last hits for the old Nintendo before they switched over to 16-bit.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same gameplay playing the NES to the Sega Genesis one because I tried both of them to see if there was a visual upgrade on Sega Genesis, and there was. Sega had visual. It's the same thing I feel like with the PlayStation, where it's like there's one system that figures out the visuals and graphics, and there's one system that's like, we're still going to figure out if games are fun. And it's like Nintendo is typically the one who's like, we're going to figure out if games are fun. Y'all can figure out how to make Nathan Drake have a more realistic mustache.
I actually had a Sega.
You had a Sega?
And I preferred the Sega.
I think I did as a kid too.
As a kid, yeah. I mean, you put me in front of Toe Jam and Earl, and I'll be
interesting.
I will be quite entertained for hours on end as I open presents and drink the root beer and burp.
I was more of a Nintendo kind of guy. Because one of the things I liked about it is it played more RPGs.
Yeah.
And it had the better shadow run.
Growing up, I had a Sega Genesis, and I am about the least refined gamer. All of my favorite games were like branded things. So like I loved Jurassic Park.
Oh, I loved those too.
I loved Jurassic Park games. Was better because you could play as the dinosaur. The Sega Beavis and Butthead was better too.
Yeah.
And the Sega Jeopardy was slightly better.
one of Jeopardy. I didn't know there was a Sega Jeopardy.
Because in the Sega Jeopardy, you could have 7 letters so you could play as fuck ass.
Yeah. What comes up?
That's great.
What is fuck ass? What questions are on the Sega Jeopardy? It must be like stuff about like Oliver North and shit. Or
yeah,
like,
probably.
What's on the Sega Jeopardy?
No, that's on the Nintendo one, the Oliver North.
Yeah,
the Oliver North
stuff.
About,
G. Gordon Liddy.
Yeah.
There's a moment in time.
There's a Jeopardy that comes out pretty much every system. Every generation there's a version.
But the Sega one you could play as Trebek, and you hit B to just be an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, it had Trebek with the mustache, which was good.
Well, I had the PC one, but the thing with the PC one that was awesome is that like all the sprites were BMP files. So if you just went into...
you could put your own sprites
in? Yeah, you could put your own sprites in there. So
that's great.
So Danzig was the king.
That's great.
Jeopardy. Danzig definitely had a lot of battles with the San Diego Chicken and Bill Parcells. It was...
But one of my favorites for Sega Genesis...
What is your skills? No, I was too slow on that one. Please continue.
Was the Ren and Stimpy game on Sega Genesis was fucking awesome, except that there was one level where the whole level you're in the freezer, which like leads to the obvious question: how big are Ren and Stimpy? Because they're supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, a Chihuahua and a cat.
Of course, yes.
But you're like in a gigantic freezer.
There were lots of size issues like that with games. The Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers series,
it breaks the game for you. Where you go, I don't understand how Chip and Dale and was it Baloo from Jungle Book? Who's the bear in that?
That was Tailspin.
I'm thinking of freaking Tailspin then.
Although the Jungle Book game was, all of the Disney games were the same game, and yet they were very fun. The Aladdin,
they weren't poorly designed games at all. Yeah, Capcom was. You've got a good development team behind those games, and some of those really.
The Jungle
hold
Book, the Sega Genesis Jungle Book game is one of my favorite games ever. I used to, and mainly because it was the Disney games were kind of dumbed down enough where they weren't like they were long and like fun, but they were not very hard.
You could get good at them.
I know a lot of things that are long and fun, but not very hard.
Whoa. Well, what? Wait, what? Huh? I loved Aladdin for Sega.
Yeah, I did too.
The Super Nintendo one is fun, and I think that's where I first played it, but then I played the Sega version at somebody's house, and I was like, no one told me he had a sword. Now he's got a sword.
Yeah.
So there's some Nintendo of America for you there, too, or where they were like, we don't like that Aladdin has a sword.
Well, he doesn't have a sword in the movie, but that was great. Or does he?
He's got to have a sword in the game.
More violence is always better.
You can't just jump on the camel over and over again and have him spit stuff out.
You got to kick some ass, man. You got to kick some ass, even if you're Aladdin.
Gotta eat to live. Gotta steal to eat. Gotta kill. There's more lyrics to there. Gotta kill to fuck. Gotta fuck to fight. The Alan Menken had a lot more lyrics than actually ended up in the song. And I got
fucking and fighting. It's all the same.
Oh yeah, it's all. Yeah.
But living with the genie is the only way to stay sane.
That was the tagline for the Disney's Aladdin: "Fucking and fighting."
Yeah, I think actually Gigi Allen was the genie, and they called him Genie Allen. And and he just covered the entire walls with his own feces. Robin Williams,
and it was blue too.
It was blue. Yeah, he had blue feces. So method to a point. Gigi Allen, he was a method actor. He did it right. He was going, I'm going to be blue. And then he wiped his doo-doo all over the studio. And they go, Robin Williams, can you come in here? And then
pull the lamp out of his ass. And let's try this again.
Do you know that?
Do you know anybody that's good at cleaning walls, Robin?
Good pressure cleaner.
I'll do it. And he does a bunch of cocaine and just wipes all the walls.
I got a hose, but this hose doesn't spray water.
Somebody in here was a party pooper. You think he should have lived off those genie royalties he got from Sega?
He had a weird contract with Disney where they're not allowed to touch any of the recordings of his voice for 30 years after his death. He had a thing in his will.
That's awesome.
Disney, you can't touch the character for a minute and make a bunch of money off of it.
So what? Just stop them from doing a special edition?
They kept pulling him back in to do. It's such a popular character, but
right. Oh,
he's Robin Williams, and he doesn't want to keep coming in for 40 years to do
video games.
Didn't they have the Homer Simpson guy do his voice for the cartoon show and shit like that?
Oh, Dan Castellaneta.
So
I believe it.
Did you miss me? Be honest. Take care of these, my good mammal. Careful, they're heavy. Hang on, I got souvenirs for everybody. Woo, she dances.
You saw the whole world already?
It's a small world after all. But Agrabah has something that no other place in the world has. You guys!
Oh, you think that guy's got enough money? You think any of these guys have enough money?
I think that guy is real glad he was on the Tracy Ullman show. I think a lot of people are, because the Simpsons core cast is the Tracy Ullman show
Tracy
cast.
Ullman fucking feel?
I don't know, man.
Somebody spin off.
She's got
she was in that movie with Paul McCartney. Remember that?
And she has all those they don't know about us royalties.
What was a game that you got that was just the most disappointing or the most underwhelming?
Letdowns. Letdowns are hard to think about. I mean, if you ask for as a kid, you don't have like much of a critical eye yet, so a lot of
Yeah.
stuff is still pretty cool, even if it sucks.
Yeah, that's
So,
a good
you know,
point.
there's things that I play now where I go, oh man, the incredible graphics in Clay Fighters were cool, but
That's
this is
a
not.
fucking great example.
This
Blue
is not-
suede goo.
That's the one with the snowman, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the snowman, but it's because they're pre-rendered sprites or GIFs or whatever they are.
Yeah.
They're pre-rendered. They're not rendered in the game. In the 90s, you look at that and go, oh, it's as good as the Toy Story movies by Pixar. But then you learn about like what's actually going on there, and it's like, oh, I'm moving around a movie of a character, so it's not taught. It's not like you don't see the punch connect to the other character like in Street Fighter, where the characters are rendered in-game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead, it's playing a little dinky QuickTime movie that's maybe 57 kilobytes big, and you know, you play some of those games, you'll miss or platformers, especially in Donkey Kong. I think in Donkey Kong Country, which everybody loves, it's not the tightest platformer because your movie self will be on the bridge, but you'll fall.
I agree completely.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I agree. It's not got tight control.
It doesn't
because they're
have
so
tight
in love
controls.
with like the rendered graphics. They didn't make the game tight enough.
It's that mystical land in between the SNES and the N64 wherein we lost Star Fox 2. Did you know that Star Fox 2 was completed? And then they just thought that the N64 was coming out a year earlier than it ended up doing. Shigeru Miyamoto said, hold off on Star Fox 2. It was already completed. So now they've got this new Super Nintendo coming out, Mini SNES.
Yeah, I was mad that they got rid of the Mini NES and discontinued it so
I don't know
quickly.
why they discontinued it so
Yeah,
quickly.
I wanted one.
And I don't know why there are no Switches in Target. Nintendo is like making great stuff, and then they're like, we should only make 30 of these. No one wants it.
Well, it's like that, like controlled demand, right? Like that's
where they make us want the thing.
Yeah, like I think it creates an artificial demand, and
Can we just figure out socialism already?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. I know that's what everyone's thinking. Not really, but like a little bit.
What
it's
is
like,
it? Are y'all
figure it
talking
out.
about that thing that was big over Christmas? That was like that Nintendo.
Yeah, it's a Nintendo, but it's a
they're
solid
doing a new
thing.
one, a SNES, and it's going to have Star Fox 2 on it. It's going to be the official commercial release of Star Fox
for the
2.
first time ever.
For the first time ever,
That's
they're going to put
amazing.
it on that system.
Yeah, well, and I think that the demand for that's only going to grow.
Well, those games still work is the thing. Like when you take the time to actually figure out a fun game and make it a fun game, you
gonna
can
be
sit
fun.
down and play
Yeah.
Super Mario Kart, as ugly as it is, and have fun playing it because they figured out a good game.
Oh yeah.
Actually, you remember we mentioned Waluigi. What is the point at the beginning?
Sure.
Waluigi is great in Wario Kart because his resemblance to Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races.
You get a Wacky Races thing. Yeah, exactly.
He was really good in the what was it, GameCube Mario Baseball that they had.
The Mario sports games are great.
Yeah,
I love Mario
even
Tennis.
Mario Golf.
I love
back
Mario
in
Strikers.
the NES day. It was.
Oh yeah,
I like in a Nintendo golf game just for their boring relaxedness.
Tell you what, if you like RPGs and you like golf games, the studio that developed this Game Boy Advance RPG that I loved, which is actually kind of a homage to SNES console RPGs, it's called Golden Sun, and the company that made it, Camelot, made a Mario Tennis game for Game Boy Advance, and you can emulate it on your computer or something. But it even has like a top-down perspective where you're like, you walk around as your little golfer and talk to people in the town area, and then there's like golf missions.
Oh, that sounds
where
awesome.
you play golf. So if you like a little bit of an RPG taste and a little bit of golfing,
I'm sold. This is.
I'll try and find that game for
Boy
you. and
Advance?
It'll be for Game Boy Advance, and that's an easy one to emulate on your computer.
Okay.
So you
With
can play
when
on
it
your
comes to RPGs, I know nothing about it. But
Okay.
the one RPG that I was obsessed with was a Sega one called Landstalker.
Landstalker.
That one was fucking awesome.
Was
The
it
one with
Swords
Nigel,
and,
right?
and
Yeah,
Magic?
Nigel. Yeah.
What are you doing? In it?
You're a treasure hunter,
Treasure hunter.
and you go on all these little side quests.
It's sort of almost like a C64 style RPG,
Yeah.
isn't it? Commodore 64 type game.
Well, no, but it's like this weird sort of 3D perspective.
Yeah, I like the 3/4
first person?
perspective.
Yeah, no, it's like essentially you have the character that walks around and stuff like that, but instead of it being a side scroll, it was essentially the plane was almost like a diamond plane, and you could walk around in all the different directions.
yeah,
Like in
yeah.
Solstice and games like that.
Yeah.
Super Mario RPG for
Yeah, yeah.
SNES had a thing where it's kind of like you walk in and there'll be like a door at the other end of the little 3D plane, and it just flashes and pulls up another square.
Yeah, and
to
it's
walk around.
it's a fantastic game.
I bet it is.
Very good.
Yeah, some of them figured out. I mean, there's
I played it with my dad, and he was asleep
Oh,
when
really?
I finally got to the last level. And it was
Oh.
about to beat the final person, and I paused it before I did the final fatal blow, and I woke my dad up at like 11 p.m. I was like, Dad, it's almost there. And he kind of like was like, what are you talking about? And then he just like, he like kind of shuffled out of the bed in his like tighty whities, and he just stood in my room, and I was like, look, and then I beat it, and he was like, that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't have any memories with my parents playing games, so that's like really cool.
I have a parent memory. All right, most people don't know this. Y'all have heard the music when you turn on Punch Out, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, the intro music when you put the thing on, I was playing that. I had the game on, and my dad hears it, and he says, "Is that a boxing game?"
Wow.
The intro to the music at the beginning of Mike Tyson is the theme song of the Gillette Cavalcade of Sports. It's an old Gillette jingle that they used to use at the beginning of boxing broadcasts in the 50s.
Wow.
And I had the game on. I'd never heard this from nobody. And my daddy recognized it right away. And then later on, I saw an episode of the show on the ESPN Classic. And he was right.
Men's grooming giant Gillette united your father and you
exactly
through boxing
and Nintendo, because it's called To Look Sharp.
This one,
To Look Sharp. Da, 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 da. He knew all the words.
Wow, it's a Gillette ad.
Yep. Da da dum dum. Da da dum dum dum. It's the closest shave that you can get.
Wow.
Whoa, that's fucking crazy.
Say, look at that. It learned it right here on the goods.
Also, I bet you didn't know this. Little Punch-Out trivia. Don Flamenco is actually San Antonio Spurs star Manu Ginobili.
Is he?
Yeah.
Well, no, but what's his name? Super Macho Man or whatever definitely looks like Billy Graham.
Yeah, no, because he's balding and he has like kind of the mullet deal.
And he has the characteristic like weird Billy Graham along the cheekbone sideburn.
Yeah, Billy Graham the evangelist?
No, superstar Billy Graham, the wrestler.
The wrestler.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a whole lot of difference between pro wrestling and televangelism.
No, it's
there's heels and faces.
And they're both really entertaining when you're stoned.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, there isn't an equivalent of Great Tiger. So,
no, there was a kid in my class, a Spanish kid in my high school class, looked like him.
That's great.
By the way, why come he's allowed to use magic in a boxing match? That's bullshit.
The Gillette Cavalcade of Sports is on the air. To look sharp and feel sharp too, choose the razor that is built for you. Light and regular and heavy. Hey, slick shave for any beard. Olay!
So I feel like since we're on the subject of boxing, now's as good a time as any to proudly introduce my inductees to this week's Goods from the Woods Hall of Fame. And yes, I did say inductees, plural, because I'm putting two athletes in there who will be inextricably linked forever in the hallowed halls of pugilism. And I'm talking about the Black Ulan of the Rhine and the Brown Bomber of the Motor City, Max Schmeling and Joe Louis. Joe Louis was born to sharecroppers in Lafayette, Alabama in 1914. And in 1926, they had a run-in with the Klan that forced them to move to Detroit. And Joe worked for a short time at the Ford River Rouge plant, and during his teenage years, his mother wanted him to play the violin. And Joe wanted to punch people in the face. He began boxing, and at first he would hide his fighting from his mom by stowing his gloves and tape in the violin case. Now, eventually, couldn't hide it anymore. His career was progressing, and he got really good. His overall amateur record was 50-3 with 43 knockouts. And eventually Joe turned pro, and by the time 1936 rolled around, he was 27-0. He was really, really good. Now, meanwhile, in 1936, Hitler's on the rise in Germany, and one of their biggest boxing stars was a guy named Max Schmeling. So he was a former heavyweight champion, and in 1936, Schmeling was 30, and he was seen as being kind of in the twilight of his career. And he was sort of perpetually stuck as the number 2 contender, and he decided that he was going to challenge the undefeated American Joe Louis. Now, in studying Louis, Schmeling noticed that every time Louis threw a left jab, he would drop his left hand. And so Schmeling saw this as an opportunity to throw his right cross and thought this might win him the match. Meanwhile, Joe Louis doesn't really see Max Schmeling as a threat. Schmeling was well known in America. He'd had several fights and had a bit of a reputation for being underwhelming. So Joe Louis was just taking it easy, golfing a bunch, and not really preparing for this fight. So June 19th, 1936, the fight comes around, and Schmeling has Lewis's number. In the fourth round, it's the first time Joe's ever been knocked down in his professional career. And for the next 8 rounds, Max Schmeling proceeds to just beat Joe Louis's ass. And in the 12th round, he finally knocks him out. So Schmeling goes back to Germany, and Hitler has the biggest hard-on ever for this guy because one of their Aryan warriors has just defeated a black American that Hitler obviously saw as being inferior. And so he had all this praise heaped upon him. Schmeling didn't go for that, though. Hitler made all these pleas for Schmeling to join the Nazi party, but he never did. He totally refused. Now, meanwhile, back in America, Joe Louis beats James Braddock, also known as the Cinderella Man, for the World Championship in 1937, and Schmeling decides that at this point, he's going to go for the gold and get a rematch from Joe Louis, see if he can't do it again. And after just a year of holding on to the championship, Louis Schmeling number 2 happens on June 22nd, 1938. Now, geopolitically, you have to imagine the climate is insane for an America versus Germany fight because in Europe, Germany is seen as being very, very hostile. And so this match, there couldn't have been more on the line symbolically between these two boxers. And Joe Louis knew that. Franklin Roosevelt, at one point, in meeting with Joe Louis in front of photographers, grabbed Joe Louis's muscles and said, "These are the muscles that we need to defeat Germany." So all of a sudden, Joe Louis had to be what many great black athletes for, really most of the 20th century had to be, which was, dutifully riding that line of having to both represent yourself, your community, and your country, while also being keenly aware of the fact that they are held up as being a symbol of democracy, even though they know that they're second-class citizens in their own country. This is the shit that Jack Johnson had to go through. This is the shit Jackie Robinson had to go through. This is the reason that Tommy Smith and John Carlos stood up on those podiums after the Olympics in 1968. This is a weird line that you have to walk if you're in that position, and Joe Louis was 100% in that position, where you're in the height of Jim Crow in the South, and he knows this because he was run out of the South by the fucking Ku Klux Klan. So if anybody knows that it's bullshit, it's Joe Louis, but he goes along with it, and goddamn, Joe Louis beat that ass. This time, Joe Louis gave up golfing and sex, and he trained like a motherfucker. And in their second fight, Schmeling only managed to throw 2 punches. Joe Louis, on the other hand, threw 41 punches, 31 of which landed solidly. And the match ended in the first round. Max Schmeling, they put him in an ambulance, and they drive him through New York to the hospital. And this is his actual quote about the scene on the streets in New York after their second fight. As we drove through Harlem, there were noisy, dancing crowds. Bands had left the nightclubs and bars and were playing and dancing on the sidewalk and streets. The whole area was filled with celebration, noise, and saxophones continuously punctuated by the calling of Joe Louis's name. Max returned to Europe, and now the Nazis barely wanted anything to do with him, and he returned the favor. During the Kristallnacht of 1938, Max Schmeling actually provided sanctuary for 2 young Jewish boys in his apartment to safeguard them from the Gestapo, and he started giving interviews criticizing Hitler, and as a way of punishing Schmeling, Hitler drafted him into the paratroopers, and he had to serve in Crete against his will as part of the Luftwaffe, because Hitler's a dickhead, if you didn't know. In September 1939, the war breaks out. Joe Louis is drafted into service as well, and he essentially becomes living propaganda for the United States government. He shows up in patriotic musicals. Joe Louis is kind of all over the place, and he becomes a big, big celebrity during the war. The war ends. Schmeling goes back to Germany, discovers that his house has been completely wiped off the face of the earth, starts to rebuild his life, has a brief attempt at coming back into boxing from 47 and 48. That didn't work out so well. He retires from boxing, and he goes on to invest all of his earnings in a lot of different international businesses that come into Germany after the war. And probably the most notable one is that Max Schmeling became the very first owner of a Coca-Cola bottling plant in Germany and made fuck tons of money over there. Joe Louis, meanwhile, he kind of fell on hard times. In 1960, he was featured on an episode of the show This Is Your Life, and they introduce one of the only men who ever knocked him out. Max Schmeling comes out, and Joe and Max give each other a big hug. You can actually see this on YouTube as well. They had a great friendship after this. They went on to be very close. And during the 70s, Max Schmeling actually gave him money to pay off his debts to the IRS. And when Joe Louis died in 1981, Max Schmeling showed up to Vegas and was one of Joe's pallbearers at his funeral. So it was a lifelong friendship. Max Schmeling ended up living until 2005, and he died at the age of 99. So it's a real interesting story, and it's with great pleasure that I introduce this week's inductees into the Goods from the Woods Hall of Fame, Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. Here's to you guys. Keep on punching.
You used to be able to call Nintendo for tips.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember those games. A lot of them came with like the 1-800 number on the back of the little booklet that came in the box.
Oh, speaking of grown-up gaming habits, new thing. My favorite genre is probably not RPG. Like my favorite genre is point-and-click adventure games. So LucasArts, Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle.
LucasArts did one that
I love those games so
Do y'all
so
play
much.
Sierra games like Space Quest and Police Quest and all that?
I don't really like the Sierra
Leisure
games.
Suit Larry.
I tend to like the LucasArts because their design philosophy I like a little bit more. They believed that you shouldn't be able to do anything in the game that would kill you or fuck you over for another thing. So they hated King's Quest, where you would make one decision, 5 hours later, it turned out like, oh, you shouldn't have thrown away that key that is the only key to this door.
Yeah.
And so you have to load or start the game over in some cases.
You had to save multiple files.
Yeah.
What you had to do.
I like that the LucasArts designers like Tim Schafer and Ron Gilbert and stuff, they wanted to encourage exploration. They wanted you to click on everything and not be punished for it.
Yeah.
So there was no way to like fuck yourself in those games.
My favorite LucasArts one was one that I, like most video games that you end up kind of being a favorite are just ones that you kind of just discover randomly.
Yeah.
And this one was, the only reason I got it is because we were at Office Depot and it was on sale for like $10. My mom was like, all right, whatever. It's called Yoda Stories. Did you ever play that
for Game Boy Color?
No, well, they ended up making it for Game Boy later. I had a PC version.
Wow.
And it was great because it was small enough of a game where once you pop the CD in there, the whole thing would install on your computer and you didn't need the ROM anymore.
Cool.
But why it was great was every time you started the game, it would spit you out on a new planet. And the game was you had to wander around, you had to find Yoda, and then Yoda would give you a mission, and then you had to complete it.
Wasn't it like procedurally generated or something where they would like generate environments like new the cantina was in a different spot? And
exactly.
That's
it was always a new level. Like every time you did it,
I think Toe Jam and Earl was like that too.
Toe Jam and Earl had a similar mechanic.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors Zombies Ate My Neighbors was that's also LucasArts. That one was always the same, but the bad guys were always in different spots. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna round this corner and there'll be two zombies here.
LucasArts made some smart games, but
and they were cheap too, because that's how I got Zombies Ate My Neighbors, was because it was on sale at KB Toys.
I always assumed that like KB Toys for like 4 years always had a sign outside of it that was like going out of business.
Yeah. Please buy 300 of these hermit crabs. We've wedged into the hallway.
I usually got a lot of the LJN wrestlers there.
Sure. Yeah.
Wow, I loved KB Toys.
Yeah.
I did want to say this. Those LucasArts games that I love so much. My girlfriend just gave me like a iPad from a few generations ago, and it's my favorite toy that I've ever been given.
Oh yeah,
I think it probably came out in like 2011, and I just got around to that technology, and it's blowing my mind. You know what I love to do with my iPad? I sound like a fucking boomer talking about all of my favorite iPad shit. What I love about my iPad,
the beer app
is
the beer app is great on
the beer app. No. I will download. LucasArts would make, because those games are hard. So LucasArts would make a hint book that you could purchase from them, and they had an in-house kind of like little booklet that would give you, it wouldn't break the game for you. It would say something like, maybe have you tried looking in all the cabinets?
A tip book.
Yeah, it's like a tip book.
Yeah.
And I can find nerds in this beautiful internet age have scanned all of those books. So I have those PDFs of these old booklets that would cost me, $400 to get off eBay or something.
Yeah.
And now I can just do
Whenever I play an old game, I always check online for manuals and maps and shit like that.
I love the official copy because it's usually written, those booklets are usually written by the people who wrote the game.
I have some of that shit. Actually, I have the guide to the first Final Fantasy, like the book one they published.
You could probably sell that to this dude I know in Santa Monica for like A lot of really.
How much?
$100 or something.
No, not 100. I'd take 1,000.
You take 1,000. There's certain like strategy guides and stuff that will fetch you a pretty penny because, like, say, like the Pokemon Crystal strategy guide that came out when Crystal came out at the end of that console cycle was only printed by Toys R Us and Prima Games. So there's only like 100 copies of it or something like that.
Well, I have some
there's a
junk
lot of
like
weird.
that.
There's a lot of shit like that.
I have one of those Toys R Us Mario guides. They were given away free. It was for a re-release.
Can I play here, guys? There's this guy who owns this retro gaming store that is very haphazardly. It's like a Harry Potter set where it's like things stack over and are about to fall. I want to find this guy's voice so I can play it for you. I just heard him talking, and I just put my phone on record.
Well, let me put it this way. This guy had multiples of each Pokemon game cartridge.
That's pretty cool.
I ended up getting a hand-me-down
Sounds like Larry Bud Melman.
It's the Zapruder film.
Well, he also had another red and a factory sealed red.
I love this guy so much. He has a great store. I love his store.
This guy was ridiculous. When I bought this guy's Pokemon card collection, I found 7 base set Charizards in there.
This is so wrong, but I love this guy's store.
Well, considering base set
7 base set Charizards. You were giving them to you mint. You could literally open your own dream store.
Do you really?
Where was this place?
This is a store. It's on Palms as you drive away from the Venice Whole Foods.
Oh yeah, I live near that. I know the place you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, that guy. Go in there and listen to him talk because he's like a historian too. I love chit chatting with guys who have indie stores like that.
There's a few game stores around there because there's also that one on Venice near Bigfoot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I hate that all the good game stores are on the west side.
Well, I love it. That's where I live.
Oh man.
The things that I always was disappointed by when I was a kid, I didn't know much about what I always went for the branded games. Go for NBA Jam or whatever my dad thought was cool with video, a movie gallery. And the thing that I always would see, my hookup for new games was always Nick Arcade, and all the games I always had on there were absolutely terrible.
They were always trash, the Nick Arcade
Wait,
games.
what are you Super Turrican. And,
Wait, what are you talking? Nick Arcade?
There was a game, there was a show,
TV show. They used to show if you.
I've played that. I've watched that show.
My memories of Nick Arcade are always attached to sickness because whenever you had the flu and you were just like up at 5 a.m. and you just like felt like shit, you turn on Nickelodeon and that was what was on. It would be Lassie and in black and white Lassie and then fucking Nick Arcade.
Yeah, Nick Arcade. They didn't have any cool games on it because they invented their own games that were terrible.
Where you
right?
had to like fake run and jump at the end.
Oh, and there's no way that they had any real functionality or anything like that.
Well, they would have like random also ran games for like the video game challenges where you would have to get like 5,000 points on Chuck Rock or something like that.
Yeah, but yeah, they're picking like probably the cheapest games to license for that broadcast.
Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City.
Oh man, yeah, we were going to get to that. That's
no, and I remember on that show, the host was this like stand-up comic named Phil Moore, who I don't think ever did stand-up comedy, but just was a stand-up comic.
Except this weekend at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank.
He's on the show with.
What's the deal with Nick Arcade?
Anyway, he's on the show with Kel Mitchell and Moira Quirk. Yeah, he would always sing like they had the video challenge song, and he'd always like make up lyrics, but most of the time he'd be like, da, 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 "We got a video challenge," and it's just like, dude, what are you doing? Stop! You're paid. This is a paid job, and you're being paid to entertain me at age 8, and you're failing.
Oh God.
Give me Wild and Crazy Kids. At least there's
they didn't understand what was appealing about video games. It's kind of interesting. I don't know what is more of a generational thing that plants me in my time and place more, like 9/11 or just video games as a concept.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what really is like the Rubicon that no one can cross between like, you know, I don't know, like the Trump voting members of my family and like me,
right?
Where I think it's just things like video games and the internet and 9/11 and Columbine all just happen at weirder times in our lives, and they cemented different opinions.
Mass-produced baseball cards. I think that was another thing.
Well, there's just this whole like generation of people who can remember the Slumber Party with GoldenEye or with like, you know, Mario 3 or just like staying up all night and trying to like beat a thing collectively, you know.
Well, it's something where I think I don't know what it is. Like when you read books, apparently books, research says that when you read a lot of fiction, it engenders empathy. So like children who report that they've read more books tend to be more empathetic. Like they tend to be able to imagine themselves in someone else's shoes and thus act according to that. But people who don't really read fiction are like, fuck you, man, it sucks to be you. Because you haven't built a thing where you crawled into the guy from The Shining's mind and thought, well, what would it be like if Jack was a dull boy and didn't like play? Right. So I wonder if there's something with video games. Like, I wonder what video games do to us.
Oh, we're about to find out.
I think it makes us into a bunch of damn morons.
I disagree.
But I enjoy it, so I ain't complaining.
Depends on the game.
I disagree.
Depends on the game.
I think it's weird. I think it's weird because I grew up all my life listening to all of the adults watching Bill O'Reilly and Fox News and listening to Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity. And anytime there was a mass shooting, everybody would go, well, they've got these video games that program children to be these contract killers. Yeah. And I'm like, hold us.
Old
fucking
people
second.
always say that. They said it about rock and roll in the 50s.
But
and they
that's
said
what
it
I'm
about
saying.
comic books. And then they said it about rap music and heavy metal.
They'll never say it.
It's like, you're missing the point. Marilyn Manson is hilarious.
They'll never say it about Fox News. They'll never say that Roger Ailes has molded their brains into aggressive,
No, because that's because it's not a kids thing. It's always one of those, well, what's wrong with these kids today? And then it becomes, well, what did we not have then and all that?
It's so weird.
I'm waiting for the moment where we do have the perfect mixture of video games and irony in our culture for like somebody to run for president and their slogan is boom shakalaka. You know?
Oh, really?
Like a soundbite from NBA, like, is it the shoes? He's on fire. It's like, I will vote for this man. Hey, he's on fire.
That should be Glenn Jacobs' campaign slogan for mayor of Knoxville.
Like, he's won 3 elections in a row. He's on fire. You know?
That's really what we should give them, is like an immersive RPG sim where it's like America as it never was, like an Imagine 1955, where it's like a Mayberry, and we just let all them get lost in that.
Right.
They just get lost in this beautiful labyrinth of Norman Rockwell imagery where it's like, hey, check it out. It's this picture of America as it's never existed ever. That they can play. I think that would be really good for them.
Yeah. I think it sounds like a pretty fun game as it is.
I thought that was.
You think you would want to play that?
Yeah, especially if Mayberry was in it. I could go and talk to all the people on the Andy Griffith Show.
Man, I don't want to go to the Andy Griffith Show. I remember watching that show growing up in the 90s with like what the 90s is like and being like, how are there no black people in friggin' what is it? North Carolina. How are there no black people in North Carolina?
That aspect I admit was never realistic. But beyond that, it's a damn good show.
I just that always caught me ever since. That's a generational thing where I just can't think Andy Griffith is interesting because I'm just like this has never existed. Mayberry has never existed.
But there were no integrated shows like that back then.
I know, but it's like it's impossible.
I grew up with all this stuff residually, and to me, it's just like that was TV. It was part of TV land.
I guess.
There was no black people on Inspector Gadget either, and he went to Africa 3 times. That I thought was odd.
Oh man, yeah, that's true.
So I was gonna we mentioned it earlier. I was gonna run by you guys. If you just punch into Google worst video games of the 90s, it gives you kind of a little list. And I was just gonna run some by you, and if you guys have heard of these, want to comment on them.
I've played some of them, I'm sure.
And we'll start with Michael Jordan's Chaos in the Windy City. Did anybody?
I've never played this one. Tell me about it.
I played it. It's bad.
Is it a fighting game? Is it like Shaq Fu?
Kind of, yeah, because it's like part basketball, part adventure.
But it's less of a Shaq Fu and more of like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, but with basketball.
I have played that.
And that game is magical.
Yeah.
You like it? See, I got that on my DS thing.
Any way in which you can use a choreographed dance sequence with dogs to beat a boss, I'm all about that.
There's an arcade, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker at the Redondo Beach Arcade, but it always freezes when you get to the boss of the second level.
Oh yeah,
it's been there. It's been that way for years. Never seen Bale on that point.
Sort of like his childhood. Never
happened.
Shaq Fu also.
Shaq Fu. That's another one that's listed.
That game's great.
Yeah,
Shaq Fu.
Didn't that come free with something at one point, like tickets to Kazam or some shit?
Oh yeah. Maybe it was a Chex Quest situation.
Chex Quest was great.
I don't know. I'm sure it's been oft anthologized on many podcasts, I'm sure. But have you ever heard of the indie game? I think it's called Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden.
No, what?
Okay, so you know how there was this Charles Barkley game called Shut Up and Jam?
Yeah, it's great.
All right, so there's like an indie developers team.
Yeah.
And it's probably the funniest Wikipedia I've ever read. It made me laugh out loud so many times. But the summary all right, so it's in the style of JRPGs. The main character is Charles Barkley, and it's called Charles Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden or something. and it is a Final Fantasy style, top-down, old RPG. And the plot synopsis of it is batshit because it's mixing in all of the 90s Final Fantasy type story elements with a bunch of NBA shit. So it's like...
Yeah. Oh, I've got it right here.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
Read some of it.
The game starts off in 2041, 12 years prior to the main part of the game, in post-cyber-apocalyptic Neo-New York. Charles Barkley performed a powerful dunk called the Chaos Dunk in a basketball game, inadvertently killing most of the people in attendance. As a result, basketball was outlawed, and many basketball players were hunted down and killed.
Well, probably rightfully so. Let's be honest.
Doesn't that sound like a great
This sounds
game?
so much better than Space Jam.
Yeah, I know, right?
In 2053, another Chaos Dunk is performed in Manhattan, killing millions. Barkley
Chaos Dunk?
Barkley is blamed for the Chaos Dunk and is hunted by the B-ball removal department led by Michael Jordan. Barkley is rescued by another outlaw.
Of course Michael Jordan would lead the b-ball
Yeah,
removal.
he would.
He's
Like, have you ever heard his Hall of Fame speech? I mean, he just like spent the entire time being like, you know, Isaiah Thomas thought he was good.
Oh my
but he's not as good as Michael Jordan.
What
Michael
the
Jordan.
fuck? Barkley is rescued by another outlaw referred to as the Ultimate Hellbane. Hellbane leads Barkley to the tomb of LeBron James, revealing that Hellbane's real name is Baltheos, the Octoroon, great-grandson of James. The ghost of James tells the two to seek the cyber dwarf. Dude, this sounds like...
It's great. It rides the perfect
and then
line.
randomly they throw in the Little Tom's Cabin level, like...
Yeah, I'm so confused of why Barkley is a mass murderer and we're supposed to play as him.
There's a terrorist organization named Blood Moses.
Is it led by Moses Malone?
I bet it is.
Blood Moses used a powerful basketball called the Ultimate B-Ball and the same ball used by Monstars. The fucking Monstars are in this?
All right, this sucks. The Monstars are in it. Space Jam is butt. Anything associated with it is suspect, including the Birmingham Barons baseball team.
And R. Kelly.
Yeah.
What about Bill Murray though?
And Wayne Knight's great in it too.
Oh man, Wayne Knight taken it to the house.
But your point is very valid, Pat.
Very much less of Larry Johnson.
Wayne Knight might be my favorite. Not to go off on too many tangents, but Wayne Knight might be my favorite Ralph's celebrity sighting.
You saw him?
Seeing a celebrity at Ralph's. Yeah.
Oh, tell me everything.
Oh, I just saw him, and
at Ralph's.
At Ralph's. That's really the story. Also saw J.K. Simmons at Ralph's. Also saw.
Wow.
Who else have I seen?
Glenn Danzig.
I don't think I've seen. Oh, he's up in Los Feliz.
Yeah,
isn't he?
Pat sees him at Trader Joe's from time to time.
I saw him at the Trader Joe's.
See, that's what you have to go to the Trader Joe's, not the Ralph's, to find out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's
Danzig
the one on,
is bougie.
It's the one on National over by the 405.
Oh,
that's
okay,
not far
good.
from where I live.
Gotcha.
It was.
I was about to say
it was Danzig's beach day.
Yeah.
There's like 3 Trader Joe's that I can't go to because of ex-girlfriends using them all the time.
Oh wow.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Is there a game that just feels like home to you? Like one that is just comfortable, is reliable, always kind of fun?
Well, there's one that I'm sick of playing, and it's not the one that I want to officially say for this question.
Yeah.
So I'll get it out of the way real quick and talk about the one that I do want to talk about. And the game that I have played like 500 hours of, and I hate it, I truly hate it, is Final Fantasy Tactics Advance 2, Grimoire of the Rift for DS. It is a strategy RPG, and for some reason, the engine of that game is like, I'm addicted to the engine of that game the same way that I'm addicted to like Microsoft Word, and I can't use any other word processor.
Yeah.
For some reason, it's like the engine of this game. And it's really complex. I've tried introducing friends to it, and they'll play it for a second and go, "That game's broken."
Yeah.
And I go, "Yeah, it is."
Yeah,
I've played it on hard for hundreds of hours. I'm obsessed with it.
Wow.
But I think if I had to pick a favorite video game that like sums up everything that I like about video games, it's got to be like Metal Gear Solid.
Oh, okay.
Like Metal Gear Solid 1 or 2.
because it's a violent game, but it's also you got to have some brains.
It's a violent game.
Strategy.
There's puzzle solve. Yeah, because all right. So one of my favorite puzzles in any video game ever, and it's going to be so gimmicky when you hear it out loud, you'll go, "Oh, that's annoying design." But I love it because it represents what I love about the Japanese approach to video games and stuff, and all of that. It's such a great puzzle. You beat the first boss, Revolver Ocelot, first proper boss in Metal Gear Solid. His name's Revolver Ocelot.
That's a great name.
Besides being a great Japanese game, it's a great Japanese action movie.
Yeah.
It's got great tropes and archetypes and names and dialogue. But when you beat the first boss, your commander, you have all of these long cell phone conversations with your commander, basically. And that's like what most of the exposition of the game is. Your commander tells you, the person that you need to reach to get into the next area is their frequency can be found on the back of the box. And you spend all of this time in this basement area looking at all these boxes, trying to see this 5-digit number, to see where a 5-digit number is written on the thing. Dude, the 5-digit number that they want you to look for is on the back of the box for the game. They want you to look at the game that you bought, the jewel case. Shit. And look in the screenshots. One of the screenshots is you talking to the person you're supposed to talk to. Whoa. And you look at the number on it and type in 141.95 or whatever, and it brings up, and they're like, "I'm glad you found me." Like it's one
of those. It took you forever to figure that out, right?
It takes a long time because, like, I'm sure with someone
else told me about this recently.
Really?
So yeah, that's deja vu. You're not the only one that's had that problem. A friend of mine, Zach, told me the same damn thing.
I just think it's a great. And then there's other really novel ways of looking at games that are fun, like this character who controls your mind later in the game, Psycho Mantis, is like he's reading all of your moves. He's reading what you're about to do next, and he comes there and he doesn't get shot by your bullet. You have to unplug your controller and plug it into port 2.
Yeah.
So he can't read your moves because it's like it does all these things that basically go, I'm in a video game. No, it's making me do stuff. I'm playing a video. Like, right. It really makes you do this loop
interact with, like,
of perception. Yeah. They like to play with expectation and perception, and so that's why I love Hideo Kojima. He's always thinking, and even in the newer games, with the newer gen games, he thinks of really bizarre things that remind you you're playing a video game, like that fourth wall. And so Metal Gear Solid is probably my favorite game to play, definitely.
Wow.
And it's just so replayable. It never gets old. And the dialogue and the scenes, so funny and stilted and strange and beautiful, and everyone should watch a compilation of cutscenes from Metal Gear Solid. Like, they'll be talking about the mission, then they'll talk about nuclear war, then they'll talk about embryos, then they get back to the mission. They'll stretch for an hour. These cutscenes will just keep stretching for an hour as they get more philosophical. Oh man, it's so perfectly poorly written.
James, where can people find you on the internet, sir?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm doing the Lord's work on Instagram, and Twitter, doing lesser work on Twitter. Sorry. That's just what my comedy's like. At Shrimp Jaj. So at Shrimp Jaj.
Oh, so you're becoming the shrimp comic because you do have J Shrimp A Shrimp J on Twitter.
Yeah, I know. I love shrimp. I just love shrimp.
Shrimp is great.
Yeah, and David Borey, when he makes fun of me, he says my papa calls them shrimps because he heard me say that once for real in our house. Like we were like making shrimp in the kitchen. I just said offhand like the most southern thing I've ever said in my life. Where I was like, my papa calls them shrimps, and then he just like burst out laughing. And he just repeats that phrase to me a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess it's Shrimp Jaj actually. Shrimp Jaj.
Alrighty. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/thegoodspod. We're on Twitter @thegoodspod. And shout out to our friend Richard Eden, our webmaster, doing the hard work at thegoodspod.com up there in the North Pole. Pat, what should they do when they get to iTunes?
Rate, review, subscribe. Tell a friend. Share the word. 5 stars. Comments that are nice. Yes. And that all those things show the attitude of gratitude.
Because if you don't have the attitude of gratitude, Fuck you.
Wow, yeah.
Song of the week this week. This is one off of Jason Isbell's new record called The Nashville Sound. The song is called Hope the High Road, and we'll see you next time.
I used to think that this was my town. What a stupid thing to think. I hear you biting off a breakdown. I myself am on the brink. I used to want to be a real man. I don't know what that even means. Now I just want you in my arms again, and we can search each other's dreams. I know you're tired and you ain't sleeping well, uninspired, likely man as hell. But wherever you are, I hope the high road leads you home again. I've heard enough of the white man's blues. I've sang enough about myself. So if you're looking for some bad news, you can find it somewhere else. Last year was the son of a bitch for nearly everyone we know. But I ain't fighting with you down in the ditch. I'll meet you up here on the road. I know you're tired and you ain't sleeping well, uninspired, likely man as hell. But wherever you are, I hope the high road leads you home again, to the world you want to live in. We'll ride the ship down, dumping buckets overboard. There can't be more of them than us. There can't be more. I know you're tired, you ain't sleeping well, uninspired, likely mad as hell. But wherever you are, I hope the high road leads you home again, to the world you want to live in, to the world you want to live in.
The Goods from the Woods was mixed, edited, and distributed by me, Rivers Langley. You can find the show on Twitter at The Goods Pod. Our theme song was composed by DJ Smiles. Check him out on Twitter at DJ Smiles.